Sir Paul McCartney's life has played out like a Shakespearean tale of ambition, fame, tragedy, and redemption. As the living legend behind hits like Yesterday and Hey Jude turns 81, he finds himself in a reflective mood, looking back on the winding road of epic highs and lows across 8 decades. Join FactsVerse as we present, at 81, Paul McCartney confesses she was the love of his life. Early loves in the Beatles era. Paul McCartney's first serious relationship was with Dot Roan, a young Liverpool woman he met as a teen. The two became involved and at one point were even engaged after Dot became pregnant in 1960. Sadly, she miscarried and they split up a couple of years later as the Beatles began taking off. During the early days with the Beatles, Paul had a brief fling with actress Peggy Lipton when the band first toured America in 1964. But it wasn't long before he became truly smitten with a young British actress he met in '63, Jane Asher. Jane and Paul were introduced after she was sent by Radio Times to cover a Beatles performance at Royal Albert Hall in London. They began dating shortly after. Though Jane was only 17 at the time, she and 25-year-old Paul bonded quickly over shared interests in music and acting. As Paul spent more time in London, he would often stay at the Asher family home for days at a time. Many of McCartney's most acclaimed early love songs were written during this period at Asher's house, including And I Love Her and We Can Work It Out. Jane was a huge influence on Paul's life and music, introducing him to avant-garde artists and expanding his cultural worldview. However, after 5 years together, cracks began to show in their relationship, as Beatlemania reached its peak in the mid-60s. Paul later hinted vaguely at cheating on Jane while she was away on extended trips. While neither officially called it quits, Jane appeared on a talk show in '68 and announced the relationship was finished. This was likely in response to Jane discovering Paul's affair with American actress Francie Schwartz. Though clearly heartbroken, Paul carried on with the Beatles, going on to meet Linda Eastman a year later. In later interviews, he spoke fondly of Jane as his first real love. Linda Eastman. Though his romance with Jane Asher defined the early Beatlemania years, Paul's longest and deepest relationship began in 1967 when he crossed paths with Linda Eastman, an American photographer living in New York. Linda was sent to London on assignment to shoot pictures of the band. She and Paul first met at the launch party for Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band that May and instantly struck up a rapport. Linda made it clear she had no interest in Paul's fame or fortune. She liked him for him. Paul was still with Jane when he and Linda met, but he actively pursued Linda over the next 2 years until they reconnected in New York in 1968. By this time, Jane was out of the picture, leaving Paul free to dive into a romance with Linda. After just 6 months together, they decided to wed, holding a small ceremony in March of 1969 at a registry office in London. At the time, friends and family questioned if they were moving too fast or making a mistake. But Paul's devotion to Linda was clear, as she became his new musical partner and the mother to their 3 children, Mary, Stella, and James. For nearly 30 years, Paul and Linda were inseparable, professionally and personally. Defying critics, their love only grew stronger. As Paul left the Beatles and launched Wings, Linda joined the new band alongside him, even with no prior musical background. Her rustic style and charm won over fans, and her keyboard parts and backing vocals became essential elements of Wings' sound. At home, as the couple raised their young children, Linda offered Paul a domestic anchor to the wild heights of his fame. Her tragic early passing from cancer in 1998 completely devastated Paul. He has often said he cried every day for a year. In the years since losing Linda, Paul has spoken poignantly about their bond being unparalleled. Despite subsequent marriages, he continues to profess she was the love of his life, the one who truly understood him and gave him strength to spread his wings into new creative terrain. Their story plays out almost like a bittersweet love song about 2 soulmates finding each other, overcoming adversity side by side, and having their destined journey cut painfully short by fate's cruel hand. Later loves and marriages. Still grieving Linda's loss, Paul McCartney found himself uncharacteristically lonely entering his late 50s. Never having spent much of his adult life unmarried, he began dating former model Heather Mills in 1999, a year after Linda's passing. Their chance encounter came at a charity event where Paul was presenting an award in Linda's honor. Heather, who had lost part of her leg in a traffic accident years prior, had gone through her own series of challenging life events before crossing paths with one of her childhood celebrity crushes. Enamored of her bold, brash personality, so unlike his first wife, Paul quickly entered into a relationship with Mills. After 2 years together, they wed in 2002. But despite their intentions, the marriage was plagued by conflict from the start. Paul's children never warmed up to Heather, turned off by her fame-seeking behavior. Tensions mounted publicly as Heather gave brazen interviews bashing Paul and inserting herself into the spotlight. She even sparred bitterly with Paul's fashion designer daughter Stella. After 4 rocky years, the mismatched couple separated, with Heather unleashing a storm of sensational accusations about abuse and drug use against Paul. Their 2008 divorce proceedings then became tabloid fodder as Heather walked away with a massive $34 million settlement, leading to outrage over her extreme demands. Paul admitted it was the lowest point in his life. In the aftermath, he took refuge in work, including forming a new band project called The Firemen. He also built stronger bonds with his adult children, gaining perspective on how difficult it must have been for them to see their father with someone so soon after losing their mother. It wasn't until 4 years later, at age 69, that Paul again took a chance at marriage, proposing to New York businesswoman Nancy Sheville, whom he'd known for over 20 years. Sheville came from a respected family and had no interest in the limelight, giving Paul a more compatible relationship out of the public eye. They wed quietly in 2011 at the same small venue he had married Linda 42 years prior. Now, over a decade later, Paul and Nancy maintain a comfortable, drama-free union built on mutual understanding, trust, and privacy. Their mature relationship seems to give Paul a safe space to reflect on the epic highs and lows of his past romantic adventures. Linda's significance. In recent interviews around his 80th birthday, Paul made his most direct statements about Linda's profound influence. He confessed that the suddenness of her tragic battle with cancer that claimed her at just 56 left so much unsaid between them. The years since her death gave Paul perspective to fully appreciate the quiet power of their relationship. Linda tamed Paul's perfectionism while supporting his ambitiously creative spirit. Her patience and humanity shaped the father he became, and the musical chemistry they discovered broke new ground for his career. Paul also revealed regrets over the turbulence his children endured after losing their mother. The failed marriage to Heather Mills put his grieving kids through even more upheaval. But in the aftermath, he focused on healing rifts and embracing their newest generations as sources of hope. He credits Linda's memory with guiding him to rebuild family bonds. Now it's time to hear from you. Why do you think his bond with Linda stood the test of time? Let us know in the comments section below.